Hello, I'm Simon Phillips and welcome to the 2011 season at the Melbourne Theatre Company, and indeed my final season as Artistic Director. I'm leaving after 12 joyous years at the company's helm. But I'll talk you through the plays now, as you'll find them when you open your brochure, and I'm sure you'll find that they're all irresistible and you have to book for all 12, as I always encourage you to do. This new play, Don Parties On, is a look at the same characters that inhabited that wicked comedy 40 years down the track. It's being directed by Robin Nevin, who has a long time association with David, dating back 30 years, so I'm thrilled that Robin is doing it. And Gary MacDonald, who's again a veteran of David's work, is heading up a fine cast. The second play in the season is a wonderful new comedy called A Behanding in Spokane. I'm worried the title will put you off because it's a bit of a mouthful, but it comes from the extraordinary black comic pen of Martin McDonough, and it involves a guy who's had his hand chopped off when he was an 18-year-old and has spent the rest of his life roaming the country trying to reclaim it and get revenge on the people who did it to him. Bert Labonte, one of our great comic actors, is cast within the play, and it promises to be a really engaging and amusing night in the theatre. The third play in the season is called Apologia. It stars Robin Nevin, who, of course, as well as directing the Williamson earlier in the year, I was desperate to feature in my final season. You've all loved her in August Osage County and in The Year of Magical Thinking, and here she heads up a play which is essentially about a woman so committed to the ideals of emancipation in the 60s and 70s that her commitments had a pretty disastrous effect on her relationship with her family. But it's a really funny domestic comedy, as well as being a very bristling play of ideals and ideas and the way the world's changed in the last 40 years. Fourth play in the season is another cheeky new comedy by Sarah Rule, whose whimsical sense of poetry is making her one of the most talked about American writers at the moment. Now, this play is set historically, just after the turn of the century, and its themes are pretty raunchy. It's about the development of the vibrator, which was invented as a treatment for hysteria in women. But the play takes on the idea that while a male doctor is staunchly and severely operating with this new instrument to release hysterical tension, the women in the play are finding it has perhaps a broader purpose for pleasure. Our musical comes next. This is called Next to Normal. Next to Normal has won the Pulitzer Prize. It's only the second musical to ever win the Pulitzer Prize for drama. It's a more serious work, but it's a stunning and adventurous piece of music theatre, and it involves a woman who is struggling with recurring depression. Since I started running the company, I have spent a lot of my time developing and associating my relationship with your favourite Melbourne playwright, Joanna Murray Smith. Felt inappropriate that my closing season would not have a play of hers in it, and indeed, this one is an absolute cracker. As usual, she's taken a great idea and tantalising theme. A couple save another couple from drowning while on holiday and are promised a gift of their choice a year later in return. But what they ask for is an almost untenable proposition. That's the cliffhanger. Come and see it. The next play in the season is called The Joy of Text, and it's written by Robert Reed. It was first presented in one of our Cybeck readings, and I do want to thank the Cybeck Foundation and the Joan and Peter Clevenger Trust for their support of new writing which allows work like this to happen. The cast is headed up by Louise Siverson, who you've most recently seen in All About My Mother. The play is set in a secondary school, and the most serious side of it is the way that it deals with the issues of plagiarism and postmodern concepts of copying or appropriation of ideas. But in and around that theme is woven a wonderful kind of comic thriller involving a very precocious young student and the disastrous effects that some of his shenanigans have on the school and its struggling staff members. Now, the stars have aligned to allow me to squeeze into my final season of the company my favourite play, and probably the world's greatest one, Hamlet, which I've really wanted to do for my entire career, ever since I read it when I was 14 years old. And Ewan Leslie's appearance at the company in Richard III in the 2010 season really gave me the ideal starting point, because I think he's clearly established himself as the star actor of his generation with that performance. You can't do Hamlet without one, and he feels to me like he's my ideal guy. So I've gathered the same team together, the creative team that brought you Richard III, and we're going to do our level best to turn Hamlet into the same kind of evening. Now, I'm thrilled to be able to include in the season the first piece written specifically for the theatre by Australia's magnificent novelist Tim Winton. This is a play called Rising Waters, and it comes to us from the Black Swan Theatre Company in Perth, where of course Tim is resident. And with his extraordinary sense of poetry and humour, he's created three characters who live kind of outcast existence, living on their boats in a marina. A design challenge which I'm sure Christina Smith, the designer, will rise to, and Kate Jerry, one of our favourite directors, will deliver up in a beautiful form. The next play in the season is Clybourne Park. It comes from America, from a writer called Bruce Norris, and probably of any of the plays in the season it's going to remind you most of August Osage County. But it's set in one house over two distinct periods of time, 50 years apart, and it is essentially a play that deals with race relations, but in a very amusing and vivid and imaginative way. It's a great ensemble piece of theatre. Peter Evans will be directing it, and the cast already includes Alison White, Greg Stone and Zara Newman, who are actors who you have loved over many years at the Melbourne Theatre Company. Now, I'm delighted to be able to welcome another young writer making her debut with the Melbourne Theatre Company in the 2011 season. Lally Cat, she's already won a number of awards, so I don't know why it's taken us so long to embrace her, but here she's written a beautiful comedy. It's called Return to Earth. It's about a young woman who comes back to the kind of sleepy seaside town that she grew up in, and starts to see it through the lens of her own very lateral way of looking at the world. Lateral is what Lally does best, and I think that you'll find her imagination one that you really want to enter into. Just before you see the final play in the season, which is, I guess, a wrapper for me. It's a revival of a production that I did in the late 80s of The Importance of Being Earnest. But when I did the production in late 80s, the ingenues were played by a budding Geoffrey Rush and Jane Menelaus, and the older people in the cast were played by Monica Morn, Ruth Cracknell, Bob Hornery, Frank Thring. It's very sad to see that three of those people are no longer with us, but we had the idea to up the youngies to the oldies and find four dazzling younger talents to complement the cast for a 2011 revival of this most beloved of all comic classics. So Geoffrey Rush will be giving his Lady Bracknell, and Jane Menelaus will be playing Miss Prism. Bob Hornery, the survivor from the character actors of the original production, will inherit the roles played by Frank Thring in the original. So that's it. That wraps the year, and I think you'll agree that you're going to be ending on a high. But the whole season is one specifically chosen for your viewing pleasure. So do come and join us at the Melbourne Theatre Company in 2011. Thank you.